What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Amazon Prime original series Invincible Season 2. This will follow Episode 6, which is called It's Not That Simple. You know what? Sometimes it's kind of nice to tone it down a little bit, to go easier than what the series is known for doing, and that's what this episode did. This episode was still incredible. I still would give this like a 9.5 out of 10, just for the simple fact that it actually develops characters. It actually gives us really somber, really heartfelt moments. And this series continues to astound me on the simple fact of how good it is at writing its characters. I think this is actually better than the boys at some points, where it has its crazy outlandish moments, which this episode does, but it also has slowed down moments that focus on the characters, that give us real emotional humanistic approaches to who these characters are. And what we see in this season, that's nothing new, but it's also very refreshing. So this episode does that in spades and does a really nice job doing it. And, it has its zany moments, especially at the beginning. We have to wrap up for the most part, the Sequid stuff and the stuff with Shapesmith and the ideas of the Lizard League and King Lizard and what happens there. And, at the end of the last episode, we assumed that Duplicate and, of course, Shrinking Ray were killed, but that may not be the case, at least for one of them. And, of course, Rex, who's lost his hand, gets shot in the side of the face or in the back of the head. So you see the bullet come out and you think he's dead. You're like, holy crap, Rex is officially dead. It doesn't work out that way. Of course, Rex is he's alive, and only the way Rex can be, where he's like mumbling stuff. He's just kind of out of it, but he destroys and I think he kills King Lizard in the process. But at the end, then he falls over, and the individuals that take care of the Guardians of the Globe and stuff like that, they basically take him to the hospital, but not before Shrinking Ray comes out of that dead creature's body, which is something that's very interesting. So at least someone lived, but of course Duplicate is officially dead, as we see in the funeral that happens later on. But we see the same thing with the Sequid stuff, where they're being overwhelmed and overburdened by all these Sequids on this spaceship, and of course they have to devise a plan to stop the Sequids and stop the Sequid creature that is controlling everything, because it is controlling this astronaut, which is Shapesmith's fault. And of course, as we see, which is it's a little bit of a trope, but we see this device that is built to basically stop the Sequids, or at least incapacitate them in a lot of respects, and they were able to get the Sequids off this astronaut and save this astronaut. And of course, we see Rudy and Adam Eve, of course, get bombarded, and they get attached to the Sequids, who are a hive mind and stuff like that. And of course, Invincible has a little bit of the device to stop them, so they use it, which is a really nice thing that stops the whole entire, for the moment, the Sequid army, until they kind of are chasing after them. And of course, Shapesmith's Martian group are trying to say that they're going to arrest Shapesmith because of what he did. The astronaut guy is really pissed off too about it. But they do a funny thing where they kind of they're like, you're going to hand him over, he's going to be shot or be killed, put to death, and then they just run out, and there's a big space battle where, of course, Invincible is able to stop the Martians and stuff like that, and they're able to go back to space. But I mean, that's all the action it really is in this episode. It's a really toned down, really thought-provoking episode when it comes to the ramifications of to lose a loved one, the idea of taking an initiative that you may not want to take when it comes to the young baby who's named after Mark's father or grandfather. And it's a really kind of, it does a lot of things. It spins a lot of wheels. It moves the story along in a very interesting old-fashioned style fashion, which I really appreciate. And I think that's what makes this episode so fantastic. And there's so many emotional moments, so many things that make you sit back and take it all in and really make you feel for these characters. For instance, the Immortal, who's rough and tumble Celtic style guy that has all these great powers, that is very rough around the edges, but he has a soft side because he was in love with Duplicate. They were in a relationship, and watching that story play out, watching him trying to deal with that, is a really impactful thing, because it shows you that people have an emotional core in this show, an emotional core with that character. So watching him have to deal with that, and watching Marcus Grimshaw go up to him and kind of console him and just he's upset by the fact that Duplicate's now dead, which is a very kind of shocking moment in the first episode or the second part, because it comes out of like, it really does come out of nowhere, but this series is known for going out of nowhere, so it's definitely understandable. But you see that with the young baby, who is, of course, like I said earlier, named after Mark's father or grandfather, and his mother Debbie does a really nice job of explaining to Cecil's character that, you know, what he did was wrong. The fact of how he is wrong, but this kid is still Mark's stepbrother, and so therefore she needs and feels the urge to take care of this kid to give Mark the chance to have a brother. And it's a really impassioned speech and a really powerful speech, because you sit there and listen to how deep and, you know, how motherly, but how willing that she is to accept this fact, but willing to do it on Mark's behalf. It really shows a interesting nature to a character that could be just like, he's going into whatever, she's going to throw him out the window, or, you know, on the doorstep or whatever, you know, homeless shelter or whatever. But she's like, no, this is Mark's brother. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to do everything in my power. I still hate Noah, but I'm still going to do what I can. And it really is a really interesting thing to see. But yeah, I mean, they talk, you know, for instance, they're trying to look for somebody to take care of the kid when, you know, Debbie, of course, has to go to work. And they bring one woman in who's like, I'm really good with children, but they're like, I don't know if you're really good with a Vegemite's kid, you know, half Vegemite and stuff like that. And then they bring, Cecil brings over this woman who knows everything about, of course, of Debbie's plight and stuff like that. And that's a really fun little scene. But, you know, that's what this episode does. There's also the dealings with Amber and Mark having to deal with the fact that Mark is constantly having to do superhero stuff. Therefore, Amber feels left behind, which you can kind of see coming, because every time he tries to settle down, there's a new call from Cecil and the Guardians of the Globe, and he has to go do this and he has to go do that. So in essence, there is this break that happens between the two of them, that maybe they're just not working. Maybe it's just too much. Maybe he needs to go off, be the superhero that he needs to be, and she needs to go off and be the whatever she's going to do through school. And they both go visit. They visit Eve. Amber visits Eve, and of course Mark visits the tailor guy, who of course is voiced by Mark Hamill. And the scene is really kind of strong and powerful in a lot of respects, because it's everybody goes through this, the emotions and the heartbreak and the ideology that comes up with, like, you know, people having to, sometimes it just doesn't work. You see that there, but they're the two individuals, and they do this in kind of a split screen format, are talking and saying the exact same thing. And the two individuals listening, Amber and the tailor guy, they're like, maybe you just need to talk this out. Maybe you just need to fix the problem, because you obviously care enough about each other, but maybe you just need to sit down and handle out some rules and stuff like that. And that's another kind of powerful and potent moment that this episode really does, because it gives levity, it gives humanism, it gives a humanistic approach to these characters, and makes it much more difficult that if somebody dies, especially some of these major characters like Duplicate, that there is some stakes set up that you will see coming, you know, as you watch the series as it moves along. And that's what it does. You know, you saw this earlier with Nolan's character and how he kind of regretted what he did, and how he became a much stronger character when it came to the caring of his son, the caring of another son. You see that when the Vetramites are holding him hostage, or in this like prison cell that, of course, Invincible is going to go after. It really is interesting, because you're watching it and you're watching the Vetramites going, what happened to you, Nolan? You were the powerful guy. You were the guy that was strong-willed, that was going to take on all these individuals, and you became soft, and we're going to put you back in your ways, and we're gonna take you down, and we're going to go after Earth and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that kind of stuff, because it shows there is no one real way to a character, that you can't just go and you just can't lump the character into one specific box. You have to move into another specific box. And I really appreciate what they did there. And I appreciate that Nolan did kind of like what George McFly did, where he wrote sci-fi novels, but the sci-fi novels, as we learned, because Nolan told Mark to look and read books to kind of, you know, learn some stuff about him. We learn about this guy and this this ray gun or whatever, and we find out that all these stories were Nolan's missions and Nolan's kind of arcs and stuff like that. And we see that it gives Mark kind of a new sense of kind of compassion and reality. But we also see that Nolan's, I don't know if it's like his once wife is killed and it's very gruesome, but he also is fighting these creatures that are much more powerful than him because of the gravity of whatever planet they're on. I really appreciate that kind of stuff because it makes it for a very unique kind of storytelling element that you don't see very often in like shows like this. Even like The Boys, I think it gets very outlandish sometimes in what it's trying to do, even though it is a different type of form of superhero show. It's still a over-the-top, overzealous show that sometimes tries to do the humanistic elements, but I think Invincible has shown once and time again that it does it just a little bit better, which is kind of unique and fun. And what's also kind of nice is William, who is of course Mark's friend, gets a little bit more to do in this episode because he's been kind of a push to the side character after Rick died in the last season, and so his character's just kind of there, to be fairly honest. But they give this character of Williams something to do, which is kind of nice and gives the character a little bit more development when they bring Rick back. And as we saw with Donald Ferguson's character, Rick has been brought back as technically a cyborg. He's now in the vein of like what happened to Donald Ferguson's character. So it's interesting to watch Rick trying to deal with that scenario because he doesn't know that he's a cyborg, but he remembers memories of like what happened to him. He also is very disturbed and perturbed and stuff like that. So William trying to calm him down isn't really helping much in helping anything because Rick is just so kind of constantly in his own world that I'm going to be interested to see in these next two episodes if they really kind of follow through with kind of, you know, keeping that character motivated, because it's going to be really interesting to see on how that plays out. But to kind of close up with this episode, Rex basically is alive. He's missing a hand, of course. I love the Home and Garden magazine bit that Eve tells Mark as he's walking away that he really loves the stories in Home and Garden, which is very Rex, to be fairly honest. But Eve, of course, learns that, you know, Amber, of course, is, you know, they're not really together anymore, so that's why it brings up that other part. But of course, we have one small segment with Alan, who is looking for Invincible because of what happened with the last episode, with, you know, them needing Mark to do stuff with the Vetramites and stuff like that, because this guy Thaddeus is of course a rebel Vetramite and stuff like that. And of course the Immortal is still dealing with Duplicate's death. Cecil goes up to him, he's like, you need a vacation. He's like, I'm not taking a vacation. And then the alarms go off, and of course the Immortal goes to investigate, and he sees Alan and he attacks Alan. And it's just a really fun back forward scene because of course Alan in space can you know, telepathy and stuff like that. Invincible shows up, and it's the one thing that this series does is it connects humor, it connects drama very, very easily and very well put together. And in this small moment where the Immortal is going to smash and try and kill Alan, there's a joke that runs where Alan's like, I can only telepathy, or I can only talk through people's mind to one person. I can't do two people at one time, which is a really funny joke. But there's a kind of a nice back and forth where Invincible, because they can't talk in space, is like, you tell him this, and the Alan tells Immortal this, and Immortal tells the Alan this, and it tells back to Invincible and stuff like that. It's a really funny joke, and I really appreciate it. It really gives some levity to this series, or at least to this episode. But this is when they kind of figure out that, you know, Thaddeus needs Immortal. Of course, Mark Grayson, the Invincible, kind of figures out that maybe his father's in a Vetramite prison somewhere, and that's kind of where the episode ends with, you know, him going off to, you know, that situation. But it leads to that conclusion, and then it ends with of course a end credit sequence with Angstrom Levy, who is being tailored by an alien, of course, and, you know, he has that gigantic kind of crazy head, and he is going to, as we saw in like the earlier first of the second season, I don't really know too much about it. The little bit I've learned is he uses different versions of Invincible, and it causes a lot of chaos and stuff like that. So I think that's where this is going. But he teleports to eventual Earth that Invincible lives on. And I like that scene when he's teleporting, because you see like a zombie world and stuff like that. And you see some other worlds, but I think the zombie world was kind of a clever touch. And it leads him back to Earth, where he's going to confront Invincible, which I think is the kind of crux of what the next two episodes are going to be, which is the kind of showdown between Angstrom Levy and, of course, Invincible and the Venturemite Army and stuff like that. Or maybe they'll leave the Venturemite Army to the last, like the third season or something like that. There's a lot of movie pieces for only 2 episodes remaining in this season, but I'm really intrigued. But with that said, to conclude this review spoiler discussion, it's just a wonderful episode. It really is. It has emotional heart. It has emotional stakes. It does things that not a lot of series are willing to do, which is make a humanistic approach to these characters or to characters in general. I'm not saying that other series don't do that. I'm just saying a series like this that is known for its bold, insane, crazy, zany, like violence, to settle down, even though it has a little bit of violence, to settle down and give characters motivation, give characters development. I think this does it in spades, and I think it is a wonderful episode and one of the best that the series has done so far. And I really, for something that's very toned down for what Invincible is known for, that's a pretty impressive thing. So overall, incredible episode. 9.5 out of 10. Very, very well put together. So that's my thoughts. Anyways, with that said, that'll be my take on Invincible Season 2, Episode 6, which is called It's Not That Simple. As always, it's not that simple when it comes to the character development. But in the comments below, what do you think of this episode? What do you think is going to happen in the next couple episodes? What do you think overall with the toned down nature of what this episode did? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell. Top the fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.